The bustling port was alive with the sounds of hundreds of different dialects and the hum of ships departing and arriving. Jack, a cultural liaison for Earth's Intergalactic Relations Bureau, maneuvered through the crowd, his eyes scanning for the arrival gate of the Rillian delegation. "Jack," called a familiar voice. He turned to see his colleague, Marco, waving from near a cafe stand, a grin on his face. "Over here. The Rillians just landed." "Thanks, Marco," Jack replied as he approached, clapping him on the shoulder. "How's the setup looking?" "All set. The translators are calibrated. Though, I've heard Rillians can be tough to impress." Jack chuckled. "We'll manage. Let's make sure they feel welcome." The two men made their way to the designated meeting area where the Rillian delegates were gathering. The aliens were tall and slender, with shimmering blue skin that caught the light as they moved. Their leader, a dignified figure with luminous eyes, extended a hand as they approached. "Welcome to Earth," Jack said, taking the alien's hand. "I'm Jack, and this is Marco. We'll be assisting you during your stay." The Rillian's touch was cool and light. "I am Lyra," she replied, her voice a melodious echo. "We are grateful for your hospitality." Marco nodded, smiling. "We've arranged a tour of the city tomorrow, but first, perhaps you'd like to settle into your accommodations?" "That would be preferable," Lyra agreed. The journey was taxing. As they escorted the delegation to their transport, Jack noticed Lyra's curious glances at the surrounding technology and bustling diversity of species. "It's a lot to take in," he commented. Lyra's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Indeed, Earth is much more vibrant than I anticipated. Tell me, Jack, is it always like this?" "Pretty much," Jack laughed. "It's never dull around here. What's R'lyeh like?" "Quieter," Lyra said, a hint of amusement in her tone. "We value harmony and study. Our cities are designed to reflect that." Jack nodded. "I'd love to see that one day." The conversation flowed easily as they reached the vehicles. Marco opened the doors for the delegates, and they settled inside. "Tomorrow, we start with the historical district," Marco said as he checked his datapad. "Lots of human history to cover." "I am eager to learn," Lyra replied, her gaze meeting Jack's. "And perhaps to share some of our own." Jack smiled. "That's the plan. We've found that the best relationships start with understanding and sharing." As the vehicle started, Jack looked back at the port, feeling a surge of excitement about the days ahead. Working with new species was always an adventure, but there was something about Lyra and her delegates that felt promising. "Get some rest," he advised Lyra. "Tomorrow is a big day." "I shall," she responded, her gaze thoughtful as she watched the city lights begin to blur past. "Thank you, Jack, for everything." As the vehicle whisked the Rillian delegates away, Jack and Marco headed back into the terminal. "Seems like a win so far," Marco remarked. "Yeah," Jack agreed, his mind on Lyra's intrigued expressions. "I have a good feeling about this." Together, they walked back through the port, their steps in sync, ready for the tasks that awaited. The first contact had been made, and now the real work would begin. Jack felt a familiar thrill at the prospect of bridging worlds. It wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about making connections that could change the universe. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the city as Jack, Marco, and Lyra, along with two other Rillian delegates, started their tour. The group strolled down the bustling main avenue, lined with historic buildings and modern shops. "Here we have the old city hall, built over 300 years ago," Jack explained, pointing to a grand structure with ornate stonework. "It's a fine example of human architectural evolution." Lyra touched the cool stone of the building, her expression contemplative. "The craftsmanship is impressive. In R'lyeh, we use resonant crystals in our constructions. They grow and adapt with time." "Sounds beautiful," Marco remarked, jotting down notes on his datapad. "We have nothing like that here." Their next stop was a popular local market, a riot of colors and smells that seemed to overwhelm the Rillian visitors. Jack noticed Lyra's flinch as a vendor shouted over the crowd. "It's a bit loud, isn't it?" Jack leaned in to speak over the noise. "Humans enjoy vibrant marketplaces. It's not just about shopping, it's about socializing." Lyra nodded slowly, absorbing the chaotic harmony around her. It's very different from Rillian markets. Ours are more serene. Marco chuckled. Guess it would be quite the adjustment. As they moved through the market, Jack and Marco pointed out various local delicacies and handmade goods. Lyra paused before a stall selling intricate jewelry. These designs are fascinating, she said, picking up a bracelet. May I? Of course, the vendor smiled, observing her interest. Lyra's fingers traced the delicate metalwork. In Rylai, we embed memories into wearable items. Each piece tells a story. That would be a treasure to keep, Jack mused. They purchased a few items and then made their way to a quiet park to escape the hustle of the city. Here, the grass was lush and trees provided a canopy of green. Lyra took a deep breath, visibly relaxed. This is more familiar, she admitted. We have many such places in Rylai. It's important to have spaces like this, Marco agreed, spreading out some food they had bought from the market. Places to pause and reflect. As they ate, Jack noticed Lyra's curiosity about the simple sandwiches and fruit. How is food enjoyed in Rylai? Anything similar to this? Lyra tried a grape, her expression amused. Somewhat. We do have gatherings, though they are often quiet and contemplative. Food is infused with nutrients that can enhance our emotional and cognitive states. Sounds sophisticated, Jack said. Here, we mostly eat for taste and, sometimes, convenience. After their meal, they continued their tour, visiting a museum dedicated to human technological advances. Displays ranged from early computers to recent space exploration technologies. Rillians have a deep interest in technology as well, Lyra explained as they examined a model of an early space station. Our approach focuses on sustainability and integration with our environment. Jack nodded. Humanity is still working on that balance. There's much we could learn from you. The day wound down with a light show at the city's plaza. Colors danced across the facades of buildings, synchronized with music. Lyra watched, entranced. It's beautiful, she said as the last notes faded. Thank you, Jack, for this insightful day. It was our pleasure, Jack replied, feeling a sense of accomplishment. We hope you felt a bit of what makes humanity unique. Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the light show's afterglow. I did indeed, and I look forward to sharing more about Rylai with you tomorrow. As they headed back to the transport, the city lights twinkled like distant stars. The day had been full of exchanges, not just of words, but of understanding, a foundation they would continue to build upon. Jack opened the door to his apartment, stepping aside to let Lyra and her companions enter. The living space was modest but well-organized, with a mixture of human and acquired alien decorations, evidence of Jack's years in interstellar relations. Please, make yourselves comfortable, Jack gestured towards the sofa as he turned on some ambient light to make the environment more welcoming. Marco followed in with a couple of digital tablets loaded with human entertainment and educational content. Lyra looked around with interest, touching the fabric of the sofa curiously. Your dwelling reflects much personality. Is it common for humans to personalize their spaces extensively? It's pretty common, Jack replied, taking a seat across from her. We like to make our living spaces feel like home, adds comfort, and tells visitors a bit about who we are. Marco chimed in as he handed a tablet to one of Lyra's delegates. We've brought some classic human films and music. Thought it might be interesting for you to experience our culture this way too. Thank you, Marco. Lyra accepted the tablet with a nod. Cultural expressions through media are revered in Rylai too. Jack smiled, fetching some drinks from the kitchen. What kind of media is popular in Rylai? Similar to films? Lyra tilted her head, considering. Our most cherished forms are holographic. They're not only watched but experienced. Viewers become part of the story, feeling the emotions and thoughts of characters. That sounds incredible, Jack mused as he handed out the drinks. Here, we're still mostly observers in our stories. The evening continued with Jack showing a classic human movie on the main screen. As the film played, he explained the nuances of human storytelling, the historical context of the film, and why it was considered significant. Lyra was attentive, occasionally asking insightful questions. Do humans often explore themes of conflict and reconciliation in their tales? Very much, Jack nodded. It helps us process our history and hopes for the future. What about Rillian stories? Ours often explore harmony and the interconnectedness of all life, Lyra explained. Conflict is there, but it's not the focus. After the movie, they discussed the characters and plot over a light dinner that Jack had prepared. The conversation then shifted towards human cuisine. Lyra tried a bit of everything, her expression thoughtful. There's a richness to your flavors that's quite different from Rillian food. We focus on nutritional balance and often miss this variety. Jack laughed. Yeah, humans love their flavors. We often say, variety is the spice of life. As the evening wound down, Marco brought out a human musical instrument, a guitar. Ever tried one of these? He asked Lyra. No, but I am familiar with stringed instruments, Lyra replied, her eyes lighting up. May I? Of course. Jack handed her the guitar, showing her the basic chords. Lyra's fingers were clumsy at first, but she soon adapted, coaxing a melody from the instrument. It's beautiful, she said, handing it back to Jack. Music truly is a universal language. Jack played a few tunes, with Marco joining in with a harmonica. The music filled the apartment, a blend of human and alien appreciation hanging in the air. As the night ended, Lyra stood, her expression serene. Thank you, Jack, Marco, for this evening. It was enlightening to experience your culture so intimately. Our pleasure, Jack replied, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction. We're looking forward to learning about Rillian culture tomorrow. Yes, Lyra agreed, her eyes reflecting a spark of excitement. I shall share with you the music and stories of R'lyeh. Perhaps you will find them as enriching as I have found yours tonight. They said their goodbyes, and as Lyra left with her delegates, Jack felt a profound connection had been forged, not just between individuals, but between two very different cultures. The evening was crisp, and the sky was a clear canvas for the stars. Jack, Lyra, and Marco, along with a few other astronomy enthusiasts, gathered at the local observatory, a favored spot for both casual stargazers and serious astronomers. Tonight, we've got perfect conditions, Jack remarked as they climbed the steps to the observatory's main deck. Clear skies and new moon. Ideal for stargazing. Lyra looked up, her eyes reflecting the starlight. It's beautiful. In R'lyeh, we have luminescent clouds that often obscure our view. It's rare to see the stars so clearly. Here's hoping we spot some interesting celestial events tonight, Marco added, setting up a telescope. The group settled around the telescope, and Jack began pointing out constellations, explaining their significance in human culture and history. Over there, that's Orion, the hunter. And that bright star? That's Sirius, the brightest star in our sky. Lyra listened intently, her gaze following Jack's directions. We have similar myths in R'lyeh, tied to the stars. They guide our philosophies and laws. Marco adjusted the telescope, focusing on a distant cluster. Want to take a look? This cluster is about 4,000 light-years away. It's a pretty sight. Lyra peered through the telescope, her expression one of awe. It's incredible. Our astronomers use instruments to observe, but it's not common for civilians to engage with astronomy directly like this. It's a hobby for many here, Jack explained, taking his turn at the telescope. Helps keep us connected to the universe. They took turns observing different celestial bodies, with Jack and Marco explaining various astronomical phenomena. As the night deepened, the temperature dropped. Jack noticed Lyra shivering slightly. Here, take this, Jack offered, draping his jacket over Lyra's shoulders. Thank you, Jack. Lyra smiled warmly at him. Your kindness is much appreciated. It's what we do, Marco chimed in, handing her a warm cup of coffee from a thermos he'd brought along. Keeps the cold at bay. The conversation shifted to the technology used in human space exploration as they walked over to an exhibit showcasing models of spacecraft and satellites. Our technology might not be as advanced as R'lyeh's, Jack admitted as he showed Lyra a model of the latest Earth orbiter. But we make do with what we have, pushing the boundaries bit by bit. Lyra touched the model, her fingers tracing the solar panels. The drive to explore is a commendable trait. Rillians share it, though our methods differ. We focus more on sustainability and minimizing our impact on the cosmos. That's something we're still learning, Marco noted, balancing exploration with conservation. As the evening drew to a close, they watched a meteor shower, the sky streaked with fleeting trails of light. They shared a blanket, the three of them sitting close to stay warm. Lyra looked at Jack, her eyes bright with the reflection of the shooting stars. Your sky is full of stories and dreams. It's more enchanting than I imagined. Jack smiled, feeling a connection that went beyond the stars above. It's our past and our future, all laid out above us. I'm glad we could share this with you. Lyra nodded, her hand brushing against Jack's as she adjusted the blanket over their shoulders. And I am grateful to be here, sharing this moment. As they packed up to leave, the warmth between them was palpable, not just from the blanket or the coffee, but from the shared experience of looking up at the vast universe together, contemplating their place within it. The soft glow of evening light filtered through the windows of Jack's apartment as he welcomed Lyra and Marco back for another visit. This time, the atmosphere was tinged with a palpable anticipation. Tonight was about sharing not just cultures, but personal expressions through music. Thanks for coming back, Jack smiled, leading them into his living space where a digital piano and several traditional instruments from Earth were arranged. I thought tonight we could dive into the world of music. Lyra's eyes lit up at the sight of the instruments. I'm eager to learn about human music firsthand. Marco, who had brought his own guitar, chuckled. And maybe teach us something from Riley too. Jack started by demonstrating the digital piano, playing a few chords and then a simple melody. Music is a big part of human culture. Each piece can convey different emotions and stories. Lyra listened intently, then hesitated before placing her fingers on the keys. With Jack's guidance, she played a few notes, her touch uncertain at first, but gradually gaining confidence. It feels alive, she murmured, absorbed in the sound. Exactly, Jack nodded. It's like the piano is speaking, each note a word in its own language. Marco strummed his guitar, adding a soft accompaniment to the piano's melody. It's about connection. Music connects us to each other, to our emotions. Encouraged, Lyra experimented with combining different notes, her earlier apprehension replaced by curiosity. In Riley, our instruments are designed to harmonize with the environment. They respond to natural forces, wind, light, even the emotional state of the player. That must be beautiful, Jack said, genuinely intrigued. Here, we tune our instruments to standard pitches, but the idea of them responding to the environment is fascinating. As Lyra grew more comfortable, she shared a traditional Rillian melody, humming it first, then adapting it to the piano. The tune was complex, with flowing, ethereal notes that seemed to fill the room with a sense of peace and wonder. Jack and Marco listened, spellbound. Your music, it's incredible, Marco said. It's like nothing I've ever heard. Lyra smiled, pleased. Music is a universal language, but also deeply personal. It reflects the soul of our people. Inspired, Jack fetched a small drum set from the corner of the room and began to play a rhythmic beat, gently at first, then more forcefully. Marco joined in with his guitar, and Lyra wove her melody into the growing tapestry of sound. The trio played together, the music a blend of human and Rillian styles that filled the apartment with a rich, harmonious sound. The session turned into an impromptu jam, with each of them taking turns to lead or blend into the background. As they played, the barriers of species and culture seemed to melt away, replaced by the shared language of music. Laughter and applause filled the room, punctuating their musical exploration. Finally, as the evening wound down, they sat back, instruments resting beside them. That was amazing, Jack said, a wide grin on his face. We should record this next time. Lyra agreed, her expression content. I would like that. Tonight has been enlightening. I feel closer to understanding humanity through your music. And we to understanding Riley, Marco added. Thanks for sharing with us, Lyra. As Lyra prepared to leave, she paused at the door, turning back to look at Jack and Marco. Thank you both. Tonight was more than just music. It was a meeting of worlds. Jack nodded, feeling a warmth that went beyond the notes they had played. Anytime, Lyra. Let's do this again soon. With a final smile, Lyra stepped out into the night, the echoes of their shared melodies lingering in the air. a testament to the connections they had forged. The dawn light spilled over the horizon, casting a soft glow on the secluded beach where Jack had brought Lyra and Marco for a different kind of cultural exchange, one that involved the human experience of leisure and nature. "This is beautiful," Lyra remarked, her feet sinking slightly into the cool, wet sand as the trio walked along the shoreline. "It's peaceful, quite unlike the bustling city." "It's a different side of Earth," Jack said, hands in his pockets as he watched the gentle waves lap against the shore. "We find it important to connect with nature. Helps us reset." Marco, carrying a bag with breakfast items, nodded. "And it's a perfect place for some human-style fun." "Ever built a sandcastle, Lyra?" Lyra looked puzzled. "A castle in the sand? I'm intrigued." They found a spot near the water's edge, and Marco dumped the bag, pulling out sandwiches, fruits, and some plastic tools for sandcastle building. "It's a bit of a childhood tradition here. We shape the sand into structures, decorate them. It's very hands-on and creative." Lyra smiled, kneeling beside the pile of sand they had started to accumulate. "I'd like to try." Jack demonstrated, scooping and packing sand, then shaping it into the base of a castle. "You pile it up like this, see? Then you can carve out parts to make towers, walls." Lyra followed suit, her initial tentative movements growing more confident as she started to shape her own structures. Her castle was less structured, more flowing, almost mimicking the fluid architecture of R'lyeh. "This is fun," Lyra laughed, looking up at Jack and Marco with a bright expression. "In R'lyeh, creation is more about harmony and utility. We rarely do things just for play." "That's something we have in abundance, play," Marco said, working on a moat around his castle. "It's how we learn and bond, especially as kids." As the sun rose higher, warming the beach, the three of them took a break to eat. Sitting on a large blanket, they discussed more about human and R'lyeh leisure activities. In R'lyeh, leisure often involves meditation and sensory experiences, Lyra explained, biting into a sandwich. "We immerse ourselves in environments designed to enhance tranquility." Jack nodded. "Here, it can be anything from reading a book in silence to, well, making noise and messes like we just did." After breakfast, they ventured into the water. Jack taught Lyra how to skip stones, showing her the flick of the wrist required to get the flat stones to bounce across the surface. Lyra tried, her first few attempts plunking straight into the water, but she quickly got the hang of it, her stones skipping 3, 4, 5 times, eliciting cheers from her companions. "It's all in the wrist," Jack said, grinning as he watched her delight in the simple game. The morning passed with them exploring the beach, collecting shells, and discussing their respective planets' oceanic research. Lyra was particularly interested in human marine biology, a field R'lyeh hadn't developed due to their planet's lack of large bodies of water. "It's fascinating," Lyra said as Jack described coral reefs and marine ecosystems. "So much life and color beneath the water." "Yeah, the ocean's another world in itself," Marco added, joining in with anecdotes from his own experiences scuba diving. As the day wound down, they cleaned up their picnic spot, leaving no trace on the beach. Lyra stood looking out at the horizon, the wind tugging lightly at her hair. "This has been an enlightening day," she remarked. "Thank you for sharing this with me." "Our pleasure," Jack responded, feeling a profound sense of camaraderie. "It's been great showing you a part of our world." As they walked back to the car, their shadows long on the sand, there was a comfortable silence among them, filled with mutual respect and the joy of shared experiences. The day had been simple, yet it had deepened their understanding of each other, highlighting the universal language of play and leisure. The mood was mellow as Jack, Lyra, and Marco returned to Jack's apartment after their day at the beach. The setting sun cast a warm, golden light through the windows, bathing the room in a comforting glow. "I thought tonight we could try something a bit different," Jack said, setting down a light dinner of salads and grilled vegetables on the dining table. "Maybe share some stories from our planets, kind of a cultural exchange night." Lyra nodded, her eyes bright with interest. "I would enjoy that. In R'lyeh, storytelling is an art form. It's how we pass on our history and values." Marco pulled up a chair, eager to join in. "And I've got a few good ones from my travels around Earth. But first, Let's eat. As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally. Lyra described Rillian legends filled with wisdom and harmony, her voice soothing and rhythmic. Jack shared human folklore, rich with adventure and moral lessons, while Marco added tales of his own exploits in different corners of the globe. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where a few candles were lit, giving the room a cozy atmosphere. Jack suggested a change of pace. How about we try a bit of human dance? It's another form of storytelling for us, he proposed, standing and offering his hand to Lyra. Lyra looked amused but intrigued. Dance? We have ritual movements in Rylai, but nothing quite like your dances, I think. Jack led her to a small open area of the living room, with Marco selecting some light music from Earth to set the mood. Nothing too complicated, Jack assured her. Just follow my lead. With a gentle hand on her waist and another holding her hand, Jack guided Lyra through basic steps. The music was soft, just a simple rhythm that was easy to follow. Lyra found the movement strange but delightful, her initial awkwardness giving way to grace as she moved in sync with Jack. Marco watched, clapping along, and even attempted a few steps himself. Music and dance, it's like universal language, right? Exactly, Jack agreed, as he spun Lyra gently. It's about connection and expression. As the song ended, Lyra was laughing, a sound full of genuine joy. This is wonderful. In Rylai, our movements are more contemplative, less spontaneous. There's something about letting go that's really freeing, Jack said, his hand still on her waist. They paused, standing close in the soft candlelight, the music still playing quietly in the background. The air was charged with a new energy, a deeper connection forming between them. Lyra looked up at Jack, her expression soft. Thank you for this, for sharing so much of your world with me. It's been my pleasure, Jack responded, his voice low. I've learned a lot from you too, Lyra. It's been an eye-opening experience. Marco, sensing a moment, excused himself to the kitchen under the pretense of getting some drinks, leaving Jack and Lyra alone. There's so much more I want to understand, Lyra said quietly, her hand lingering in Jack's. And there's so much more to share, Jack replied, not moving away. Both about our cultures and about each other. They remained close, the atmosphere intimate and revealing. It was a night of discovery, not just of cultural nuances but of personal boundaries and connections. As the evening wound down, Lyra and Jack agreed to meet again the next day, to continue sharing and learning. There was a promise in their parting, a promise of more discoveries, more understanding, more unexpected joys in the merging of their worlds. The morning sun streamed through the curtains of Jack's bedroom, casting a warm, soothing light over the room. Jack and Lyra lay side by side, a peaceful silence enveloping them as they awoke from a night that had deepened their connection far beyond what either had anticipated. Lyra was the first to stir, her movements gentle, mindful not to disturb the quiet. She turned to Jack, her expression thoughtful, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice a quiet murmur in the tranquil room. Jack responded with a smile, his eyes meeting hers. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Surprisingly well," Lyra admitted, her gaze still locked with his. "Your planet's sunlight feels rejuvenating." "It's a new day," Jack said, propping himself up on one elbow to better face her. "A beautiful one at that." Lyra nodded, sitting up and pulling the sheet to cover herself, her movements graceful and fluid. "Jack, about last night?" Jack reached out, his hand gently touching hers. "Last night was unexpected, but I wouldn't change a thing." Lyra's smile widened, her relief palpable. "Neither would I. I was moved by our connection. It felt like discovering a new horizon." Jack chuckled softly, his touch reassuring. "Exactly. It's not just about two cultures meeting. It's about two beings, sharing and understanding on a deeper level." They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their thoughts, the weight of their shared experiences settling around them like a comfortable blanket. Finally, Jack spoke up, his tone thoughtful. "Lyra, what happens now? I mean, with us, with this connection?" Lyra considered his question, her eyes searching his. "I believe we continue to learn, to explore. What we have is unique, Jack. It shouldn't end with my departure. I agree, Jack said firmly. I've never felt this way before. I want to see where this can go, despite the complexities. Lyra nodded, her hand squeezing his. And I want to take back what we've learned here. Our experiences could help foster greater understanding between our people. Jack smiled, inspired by her vision. We could document our experiences, maybe even co-author a paper on intercultural relations and personal diplomacy. That sounds wonderful, Lyra said, her enthusiasm matching his. It could be a way to show both our peoples that meaningful connections are possible, even across stars. The conversation turned to plans for the day and then to the future, how they might continue their dialogue and nurture the bond they'd formed. They talked about arranging visits, utilizing communication technologies, and perhaps even organizing symposiums where leaders from both worlds could learn from their story. As they got out of bed, the reality of their situation began to set in, but so did their determination to make it work. They dressed and moved to the kitchen, where the smell of coffee filled the air, a comforting reminder of the ordinary life that continued around them. Over breakfast, they sketched out their ideas more concretely, their excitement growing with every word. Marco joined them later, his presence a grounding force, reminding them of the support they had among their friends. Sounds like you two are onto something big, Marco said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. We hope so, Jack replied, his gaze meeting Lyra's. It's about more than just us now. As Lyra prepared to leave, she and Jack shared a lingering embrace, a promise of everything to come. I'll be waiting for your call, she said, stepping back but holding his gaze. And I'll be here, Jack assured her, his voice steady despite the uncertainty of the future. With a final smile, Lyra left, stepping into the morning light that seemed to herald the beginning of a new chapter, not just for them, but potentially for human and Rillian relations. The door closed behind her, but the connection they had forged remained, a silent testament to the power of understanding and unity.